Chapter 13. In Quest of Information. Realizing that Laura could not be expected to join them in front of the house, the girls walked past Sing Lee's laundry, stationing themselves out of sight from the old mansion. While they waited, a car drove up. 3 Chinese people alighted, and paying no heed to Penny and Louise, vanished into Sing Lee's establishment. Presently the door of the old mansion opened, but it was not Laura who emerged. Gus Comstock, arrayed in a dry suit of clothes, closed the gate behind him, and with a deep scowl on his face walked down the street. He paused for a moment by Sing Lee's shop, and then moved on. "I wonder what is keeping Laura," Louise worried. "Perhaps we misunderstood her signals." Just at that moment they saw the girl coming around the corner of the house. Penny waved to her. With a nervous glance over her shoulder, Laura ran towards her friends. "I have only a minute to talk," she said breathlessly. "Mrs. Comstock mustn't know I have slipped away from the house." "Tell us what happened, Laura," Penny urged. "Why did you hang up the receiver this morning when I was talking with you?" "Because Mrs. Comstock was coming. She warned me that I was to tell you nothing." "What did you start to say about Mr. Harmon?" "It's awful," Laura said in awe. "He came to the old mansion yesterday afternoon to inquire about his friend, a man named Merriman." "I know," Penny nodded. "Merriman had spent the night at the old mansion some days ago. Mrs. Comstock claims he didn't." "But I'm certain of my facts," said Penny. "I saw the name on the register." "You did?" Laura asked in amazement. "That's funny, because I examined the book myself this morning, and the name wasn't there. It should have been just above mine." "It wasn't?" "Then the Comstocks have removed it either by erasure or with ink eradicator." "They may have done it," Laura admitted. "I know Mr. and Mrs. Comstock were terribly upset when Mr. Hammond arrived." "What did they tell him?" Penny inquired. "I heard part of the conversation. They tried to convince him that Merriman had never stayed at the house overnight." "Did Mr. Harmon accept their story?" "He acted suspicious of it," Laura admitted. "Possibly that was why he decided to stay all night." "Mr. Harmon remained at the old mansion?" Penny asked. "Yes, I'm sure the Comstocks didn't like it very much. They had an argument over which room to put him in." "Not number 7, Penny demanded. Laura nodded. "I heard the Comstocks discussing it when they thought no one was listening. Gus told his wife, 'It will serve the inquisitive fool right to sleep in that room. Maybe if he gets a good scare, he won't be so impertinent.'" "And Mrs. Comstock's reply?" "Oh, she protested, but Gus overruled her. Mr. Harmon's things were taken up to room number 7. "And then what happened?" Penny questioned. "Was there a disturbance during the night?" "I heard a faint cry," Laura revealed in a tense voice. "Then a splashing sound as if something had fallen into the river. I can't explain it, but the strangest feeling went over me. I sensed that something dreadful had happened to Mr. Harmon." "What did you do?" asked Louise. "I slipped on my robe and ran to Mrs. Comstock's room. She and her husband already were awake. They had heard the same noise," interposed Penny. "I suppose so. Anyway, they went with me to room number 7, but it had been locked from the inside. Mr. Comstock called to Mr. Harmon several times, and there was no answer." "The man wasn't dead?" Louise gasped. "Mr. Comstock had a master key," Laura went on. "Without hearing the question, he opened the door. Will you believe it? Mr. Harmon wasn't there at all. The bed had been slept in, but the man had vanished." Penny and Louise were stunned by the disclosure, and Laura's words lent support to Lem Varn's claim that Mr. Harmon would not be the first person to mysteriously disappear from room 7. "His clothing was still in the room?" Penny questioned. "Yes," answered Laura. "Nothing appeared to have been touched. The window overlooking the river was open. That was all." "You don't think Mr. Harmon deliberately jumped into the river?" Louise demanded. "I don't think so," Laura replied, stressing her words. "Gus Comstock says There's no question but that he did. You heard a splash? Penny asked gravely. Yes, or at least I thought so. But if Mr. Harmon's body went into the river last night, I'm convinced he never jumped. And I agree with you, announced Penny. Tell me, how did the Comstocks act when they discovered Mr. Harmon was gone? They were both terribly upset, especially Mrs. Comstock. Could they have been acting a part? I don't believe so, Penny. Mrs. Comstock carried on dreadfully for a time. She was so ill over the affair she stayed in bed nearly all morning. Has Gus Comstock notified the police yet? I should say not, exclaimed Laura. He said it would ruin him if the news was spread over the town. During the night he drove Mr. Hammond's car away somewhere, and he disposed of all of his clothing. He can get into serious trouble for doing that, declared Penny. Mr. and Mrs. Comstock both warned me that I must never breathe a word of what happened last night. They have watched me almost every minute. How did you get away now? Louise inquired. Mrs. Comstock laid down for a moment and fell asleep. She and her husband must be completely crazy to think they can hide anything like that from the police, Penny said. It looks as if what Lombard told us wasn't just idle gossip. This makes 2 persons who have disappeared from room 7. Mrs. Comstock made me clean up the room this morning, Laura reported with a shiver. While I was dusting and running the vacuum, I was so frightened my knees actually knocked together. Do you still believe that the eyes of the portrait moved? Inquired Penny with a faint smile. Perhaps they don't actually move, Laura acknowledged, but they seem alive. While I was cleaning the room, I felt as if 4 pairs of human eyes were focused on me. Nerves, probably, commented Louise. I'd be a wreck if I remained in the house very long, Laura declared. Sinister things go on there. It's fairly easy to understand why Merriman might have disappeared mysteriously, Penny said slowly. He was carrying valuable jewels. You think the Comstocks may have robbed him? Louise asked quickly. No, I'm not venturing an opinion. But it does strike me that Mr. Harmon must have met foul play because he learnt something which pointed the finger at the scoundrel responsible for Mr. Merriman's disappearance. Perhaps no person had anything to do with it, suggested Laura in low tones. Penny and Louise gave her a quick glance, wondering what she meant. I don't believe in ghosts, Laura said, half apologetically, but it seems to me we're running into something which can't be explained. There's an atmosphere about that house, especially room 7, that defies description. If you were to stay there a day or so, I'd like to have a chance to do it, was Penny's surprised remark, but Mrs. Comstock won't even allow me to get near the front door. One thing is clear, said Louise. After what has happened, Laura can't stay in the house another night. I'll be glad to go back with you, the girl agreed. That is, if you really want me. She spoke doubtfully, for Penny's face did not mirror enthusiasm. Of course, we'll be glad to take you with us, Penny said. Only I have an idea. Don't listen to it, Laura, warned Louise. Her ideas nearly always mean trouble for someone. This one might prove dangerous, Penny admitted. I haven't any right to ask you, Laura, what is it you wish me to do? When it becomes known that 2 persons have disappeared at the old mansion, it will mean a big story, Penny said, speaking excitedly. Every paper in this part of the country will send reporters here trying to get inside facts. Now here's my idea. I thought that if you could bear to stay on a day or 2, Dad would have an inside track on just what is happening. He'd pay you well for your work. No doubt the money could hire me to stay in the old house another night. Well, I was afraid the idea was a dud, Penny admitted ruefully. I have no amount of money to hire that could hire me, Laura repeated with a smile. But I'll do it for you, Penny. And now, if your plan is to succeed, I must run back before Mrs. Comstock learns that I have left the house. Do, 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 do.